we eliminate those ones, we then will be good to go. But saying we reduce recurrent expenditure when Kenyans are still yearning for more services, and when I talk about more services, that would mean we still require more employees in the government. And when you bring more employees in the government, you still have to incur expenditure on recurrent. And that one, as a country, we cannot stop that, because every year we must employ security officers. Every year we must employ doctors and nurses. Every year we must employ these other workers, including counties, because this one will depend on the need for services. So cutting down on recurrent would mean there are some services we need to compromise. So what we need to do, how do we stabilize our revenue collection, and how do we cut down on wastages and corruption? But trying to say that now the recurrent is growing, we should know the reason why it's growing, because the service need, as we are growing in our population, we need more people to be employed to deliver services to the population. But now, if the expenditure there is not clean, then we need to look into how do we make it clean. Because every Kenyan is aware there are a lot of wastages. Like this government where we are talking about now, there are a lot of wastages. You look at the number of travelings we are undergoing now. Our president is permanently on air.
But the DP at least is not using private
No, this one of DP, I never wanted to mix it with the debate we have here. It should be a standalone debate, because
perhaps it's austerity measures.
No, on DP, I have a lot of reservations. Yeah, because the Gachagua and I served in Transport Committee for 5 years. We know each other very well. And I can tell him in the TV here that he prepared this ground for himself, and he should not blame anybody. He talked too much. He was so arrogant. He could not even protect himself. Now, when he's looking for sympathy from Kenyans, the same Kenyans he annoyed are now the ones seeing him being fried. He's tasting the pill himself he instilled on other people. So now, it's his time to pay back, and don't look for sympathy from us. It's not there.
How about Robert Basil, on how much, especially for the national government allocations, we are going to spend on budget, on development, a paltry 750 billion Kenya shillings. And there is a tendency that we witnessed during supplementaries where, should we not attain our revenue targets, then we cut down not on the recurrent, but on the development. So these figures could probably be 600 billion at the end of the next financial year. Is this the right way to go in terms of realizing development for the country?
If you look at Kenya back in 1963, if you do comparative analysis, we were actually better than Egypt in our GDP, and also almost at par with South Korea. But now 61 years down the line, today South Korea is by far almost more than 10 times in terms of GDP compared to Kenya. You even saw the other day 54 African states being hosted in South Korea to go and borrow money and also seek for assistance. If you look at Egypt today, where Kenya was better than Egypt, is actually at 400 billion US dollars, their GDP. Ours is relatively lower, about $120 billion. So in principle, this is to tell you the path we have taken from 1963 to date is a wrong path. And why am I saying that? If you put so much money on recurrent compared to what you invest in development, any person, any layman, it doesn't need a genius to tell you that you'll take long before you grow and before you boost your GDP. What this country needs to do first is to eliminate duplication of services. We have seen a situation whereby you have, let's say, 4 PS, for example, who are almost performing same function. And if you look at back in the days, we used to have 1 PS per ministry. Today we have multiple PS in every single ministry, just to be able to reward and accommodate some of our supporters. Of course, it's normal for politicians to want to reward supporters, but for the sake of this country, it's better we look at what is good for the nation and then try to trim, the size of people who we are employing, so that we don't have a very heavy burden to Kenyans. Because when you have, let's say, 4 PS, I've said, all these need a package. There are quite a number of services in which eating on taxpayers' money, you know, cars, workers, etc. And then let's put this money on development. Because if you invest on production, for example, you're able to produce more to support manufacturing companies. And when you support manufacturing companies or industries, you're going to create opportunities for your youth who are actually unemployed. But today, if you look at the percentage of youth who are unemployed is actually quite high. And soon, we are going to see a situation whereby out of, let's say, 10 youth, only maybe 1 or 2 will be employed. The rest will be just on the streets.
In the coming years, that is.
If this punitive 2024 finance bill goes through. And I have reasons to support that. I've looked at some of the new taxes being introduced. Some of them are affecting manufacturing. I'll give you an example of an eco-levy, which is being brought forward. The eco-levy is going to make sure some of the intermediary raw materials that Kenya imports to support production of finished products is going to reduce, because a new tax on eco-levy has been brought, and this eco-levy is targeting intermediary raw materials. And intermediary raw materials are the ones used to finish some of our raw materials, some of our products, because Kenya doesn't seem to produce most of the raw materials that are needed. I'll give an example. Those who are exporting horticultural crops, there are certain temperatures needed in the containerized, you know, those refrigerated containers. And these materials are used to make boxes that can withstand the temperatures needed for these materials to move, or this commodity to be taken to the port or to be exported. So if you increase on the ingredient used to make these boxes, what are you trying to say? You are trying to say the manufacturer to stop processing their finished products and either leave the country, go to another country where they can be able to process the materials cheaply and export. And this is going to cost on job losses and also reduce on what we export. And if you reduce on what we export, what happens to that? It means you'll import more than you export. So you continue being a market for a net importer for most of the product. And when you become a net importer, it means your balance of payment, the outflow of your money to other countries is going to increase. And eventually you have a negative balance of trade because you have more imports than you export. So we need to relook on what works best for the country. Otherwise, I've given you an example from 1963 who are doing better. It's like people are starting a race. You are ahead when you are starting the race, but other people surpass you as time goes by. That is exactly what has happened.
Well, we are due for a short commercial break, but yes. Before that, Honorable Lote, so do you feel there is a need to actually, you know, from the 1.6 trillion that is meant for recurrent, slash it and allocate it to the development expenditure? Or during the subsequent supplementaries, if we at all fail to attain our revenue targets, then we focus more on cutting down on the recurrent and not the development. So this development budget, much as it's less, then it shouldn't be touched until the, of course, next financial year comes to an end.
I think the aspiration of every government, including every individual, is to cut on the recurrent. That is the aspiration, but it is the most difficult thing to do. The most difficult thing. And I'll tell you, like what my colleagues have said, including Basil, and also my colleague from Tom Odiege, the majority or the large part of our recurrent is actually on our salaries. And as we speak today, we have 10 million youths out there who are unemployed, and they're looking for employment. The government has of late come to levels where they start employing college students, those who are coming out of college, based on internship. If you go to the public service, you'll find that many of them are actually now.
The recurrent is not only the wage bill.
It is not, but I'm actually saying the majority, the large part of it is on wage bill, the large part of it. And that's what Tom Odiege said, that is what we need to protect. Well, the only thing that we need to cut before we go for that commercial break is we need to cut the wastages in terms of travel. And I'll tell you, this travel thing has actually killed this government. I liked what the president said before. The president said that he was going to cut on international and local travel. But that was only a word that he said. But I think ministries have not adhered to that. I call upon the president to come back to his senses and talk to these ministers again and tell them to stop international and local travel, because that is where money goes. But if it goes to a salary, please let it go.
Well, at that juncture, we take a short commercial break. But before that, remember, you can still weigh in this conversation via social media platforms at K24 TV, at Joel Chacha, as well on SMS and WhatsApp numbers on the bottom of your screens. Of course, as far as the 2024-2025 budget is concerned, I'll be sampling your feedback as they stream in. We take a short commercial break. We'll be back. Stay tuned.